The Haze Hour is sponsored by Janty, pioneers in e-cigs.
Good evening, it's Thursday and it's a Keith free zone. Daz free zone last night, well nearly. Daz was in and out like a fiddler's elbow, hence the title of the show if you've been watching it on, what do you call that thing again? YouTube, yes, or on Blip, or on the podcast, or any of the other ways we do it. Yes, it's a Keith free zone tonight. Apparently he's out gallivanting. He's partaking in alcoholic beverages while tickling the ivories, as Keith does, with some alacrity, it has to be said. But never mind, those of you that have been watching the higher definition channels will know that tonight I have a gust. I have. She's there, look. Say hello, Chris.
Hello. Evening, everybody. It's me. I'm here to poke him whenever he needs to be poked. So look at me as Keith, right? I'm Keith for tonight.
I'm here to tell you that Keith's never poked me yet.
There's always a first time.
I don't think I want to go there. Forgive me if I just don't go there, because there's something about that that's just vaguely wrong, you know? Right, I think we'd probably better have the titles. Can you do the old wig out thing? The devil hands? Oh, not you as well. That's it. Bang your heads. Yes, indeed, it is the Haze Hour with yours truly, Dave Dawn. And I should really have her over my shoulder, but I just didn't get the shot set up in time. We've also got Kat with us tonight, which is just, it's kind of good because Chris and I, we've done shows together for quite a while, haven't we? And we haven't done one for donkey's ages. Did you enjoy that?
Oh, I was rocking away.
Man of war. Man of war, that's where it's at. Yes, all good stuff. I see we've got a full house tonight, as Marky Mars spotted. I also see... just looking at chat, which I'll keep on doing during the course of the night, that Mr. Dibley is making his first mesh wick tonight.
Oh, God. Right.
I don't know what FFF stand... Do you know, these teeth of mine need replaced. I don't know what FFS stands for.
No, neither do I.
First,
I have no idea.
It'll be first fiddling session. It's his first fiddling session with mesh wick. That's what it is.
And I was thinking, you know, when you said it, I went, oh, first fiddling session.
Exactly.
I did.
Exactly. And apparently it's doing his heating. We may have to... I may have to get you to do a tutorial on how to heat one of these things, and you can show Mr. Dibley. For flip's sake, says Vaporman, whatever it is. Yes, it's bound to be one of those. We've got a barrel load of stuff to look at tonight. And one of the reasons I've got Kat on is because Kat will be the first to tell you that when it comes to watts, she says, what, don't you?
I do. What?
See? And tonight's going to be a little bit about power control. I might be a little bit controversial. I could be anything. I think what we'll do, looking at the time, we'll dive straight in with a piece of footage what I shot earlier. And now I've got to work out which one's the right one. That's this one. If it's the wrong one, we'll do it in a different order. Problem being, they've both got exactly the same picture on screen, Cat. You know what I mean, don't you? And I'm not in a position to be able to see the titles because the screen is so far away. I've got it worked out. I think, here we go. Have a watch at this. Controversial, shiny, power control, cylindrical. Well, hello. Me in the studio as per usual. And here to talk to you today about this from Smock, covered in my fingerprints, and as you will see when I turn it round, it says ZMAX, covered in fingerprints. But there you go, that's what it is. And I've got to turn it round again to show you a bit of how it works. Now, I have got no intention whatever of going through all of the menus and everything else like that. And the reason behind that is that I would point you straight at Scott Bonner's brilliant video on how the menus work and how it all comes together. There's no need for me to say any more than that. It's a cracking guide as to how to use it. Go for it, I would. Let's just say, however, that when this thing comes out of the box, it comes in power mode. Power mode being the way I think you need to use this. And what do I mean by that? Well, over the years we've looked at all kinds of different ways of getting the best out of the devices we use. We go for different voltages, we go for different resistances in atomizers, and you end up needing to do an awful lot of maths. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to get out of one of these things is a particular heat, it's a particular sensation. So this is by way of not so much a review as a little bit of a feature to tell you what power control is and why it's quite important actually that something like the ZMAX and the Darwin and the Kick exist. And not forgetting the DNA board as well. Power control is all about wattages, and let's start about talking about wattages in the way that everybody understands, and that's with light bulbs. If you want a bright light, you put a 100-watt bulb in. If you want a dimmer light, you would put a 60-watt bulb in wherever you're at. And if you want kind of romantic, gentle lighting, then you're looking at a 30-watt bulb, and you might put a 15-watt bulb in the oven, not to heat the oven, but so that you can see what's going on. The thing about it is when we go and buy these things, we buy them by the wattage. So you want a bright light, you want a 100-watt bulb. What you don't go and buy is a 52.7 ohm bulb. You just buy a 100-watt bulb because you know that's going to give you the brightness you want. Traditionally though, we've bought atomizers by resistance. Now, when first all of this started, there was no low resistance, high resistance, whatever. It was the resistance it was, and it was about 3.5 ohms. And what that ended up giving you was something like a 5 or 6 watt experience on the Lucky Lakey. And the Lucky Lakey, frankly, was all we had. And we all saw these last week, fully charged battery before use. This is the Jasper and Jasper that I was playing with last week in livid close-up. But yeah, I mean, when first it started, you got a kind of a 6-watt experience, if that. And it was quite wimpy. People wanted more. So the 510 came out with a 2.3 ohm atomizer, and that would give you a little bit more, around about 6 watt, whereas the other stuff was around about 5 watt. And people soon realised that if they took a 2.3 ohm atomizer from a 510 and stuck it on a 3.7 volt battery, they would get a better experience. The reason being, they were getting around about 7 watts out of that, and 7 watts was better than 6 watts, was better than 5 watts, and that's kind of the way it goes. And then things started to take a little bit of a turn. People realised that if you stacked 2 3-volt batteries you would get 6 volts, and then if you used a 2.3 ohm, are you seeing where this is going? We're starting to talk the need for calculators to work out what the wattage is. But basically what we were looking to do was to move from a 30-watt light bulb to a 60-watt light bulb to a 100-watt light bulb. And everybody understands light bulbs and wattages, and that's where something like the ZMAX comes into play. When you first get it, it comes in power mode, P. That P is what you're looking for. Now I've got it set, this one, to 8 watts at the minute. Let me just do that again so you can see. Power up mode, and it's in 8 watts. Let's just take it up to 9 watts so you can see where it's going. Now you'll notice I haven't spoken about the voltage settings that are on here. You don't need them. You shouldn't need them. You shouldn't be interested in voltage. You don't really want to do the calculations. This is what I think beginners find difficult. You get something like a Pro Vary and they're asking the question, well, what do I set it at? With nothing else. What do I set it at? And what you set it at is what is nice for you. The thing about variable voltage though is you've got to experiment with each different device that you have on the top. For instance, I've got a number of different devices here that are all different resistances. Let me just show you if I can. We've got my NGP Genesis here, which is a lovely piece of kit, and I find myself using it more and more. Another fingerprint magnet. I've got beside that the Penelope. Again, the Penelope is running at somewhere around about 2 ohms ish, 2 to 2.5. I don't know exactly where, but it's somewhere around there. This I know is running at around about 1.5 to 1.8. This, which is my iMist, is running at 2.1, which again, you know, it's fair enough. 3 different devices running at 3 different wattages on the same battery. I don't want that. I want the same wattage everywhere is what I want. I want to know that if I stick my Penelope on my device, it's going to be at the same temperature as if I stick my NGP, as if I stick my iMist, as if I stick anything really. And that's where something like the ZMAX comes into play. The bottom line on it is you set the temperature you want it at, and the temperature is set by the numbers that are on the dial. So if we go back into power up mode, there you go. You can set it to 9, you can set it to, it's very, very short this, set it to 9, set it to 9.5, set it to 10, set it to 10.5, set it to 11, carry on all the way up to 15 watts if you want. And it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you find the point at which you are happy. And when you are happy, then take a note of the number, because that's where you're going to want to set it the next time, and get on with it. That's how power control works. It's how it works in the Darwin, it's how it works with the kick, it's how it works with the DNA, and it's how it works with this. Now, I know there's been some controversy about it not showing the right voltages and pulse width modulation and all of that kind of stuff, and that's all valid, I'm sure, if you want to go into it that far, but I would venture to suggest that the majority of people don't. The majority of people are going to buy something like this, or they're going to buy this, and they're going to find the sweet spot for them, and it doesn't matter what the number is on the dial. If it works for them, it'll work that way with everything. Now, just as a tester, let's give it a blast. I'm going to make sure I've got this set where I want it, and I'm going to set it to 9 watts. There we go. It's now set to 9. Just to show you, if I've got it the right way around, you'll see power up 9.0. That's where I want it. Okay, so we're at 9, and this is the NGP Genesis atomizer, which I know scopes out at around about 1.5 ohms, but actually it doesn't make a difference. And that is very nice, thank you. So let's stick the Penelope on there and see what happens. Penelope, 9 watts. Haven't changed anything. I want the same temperature and I want the same experience. And guess what? No difference. Flavour's different, but that's because this is a Penelope and that's a Genesis, and that's fine. And now, I haven't tried this yet, I shall stick my iMist on with the drip tip. I drip into this, and I like these tops on here as well. I should show you really. It has a beautiful drip well in there, and actually that iMist and the ZMAX don't half match each other well. But as you can see, when you screw it in, ego connection. And as you've probably gathered, I've probably over dripped onto this eye mist, but never mind. I never claimed to be a good dripper. 10 watts. And there you go. I think, oh, that was nice. Excuse me, I'm going to have another one. There's a lot to be said for an over-dripped eye mist. It has to be said. Anyway, where was I? Yes. 3 different devices, 3 different resistances, each giving me very, very similar results. The only differences really are in the distance from the coil to the mouth itself. So where does that leave us in respect to the controversy that has surrounded the ZMAX? Well, I think what I'm going to say is this. If you take it down to 5 watts shown on the display, and let's do that, you will find that the experience that you have is not markedly lower than you might expect. But there we go, 5 watts on the eye mist. You saw what happened with it at 9 watts. Let's have a go at 5 watts and see what the difference is. It is different. It's not producing quite as much. It's not putting out quite as much power, and the temperature was definitely lower than I was getting at 9 watts. I prefer it at the 9 watt setting on here from what I do on the 5. I think what I'm trying to say is, when it comes down to the ZMAX, if you're somebody that likes a really, really, really cool experience, and you like really, really, really low wattages, i.e. you're the kind of bloke that would use, I don't know, a 4 ohm atomizer on a 3.2 volt device like an Ego, then the ZMAX probably isn't going to be for you. It might be a little bit hotter than you want. The only real way to try, of course, is to borrow one of somebody and give it a go. I suspect though that if you do like the kind of 8 watt experience, which is roughly equivalent to a 2.3 ohm atomizer on a 3.7 volt battery, then the ZMAX is going to suit you quite nicely. It will allow you to find your sweet spot. It will allow you to keep that consistent across everything that you use. Is it a Darwin in a tube? Not quite, no. I don't think it's got that level of sophistication in the controller. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. Is it something that I would use a lot? I think the answer is going to be yes, without a doubt, because I do like power control. And what I've found is I've been moving kicks around various different devices in order to get them all working the same. And I've ended up basically using power control devices almost permanently. It saves messing around, especially with rebuildables. It saves messing around counting coils and making sure that everything's exactly as it should be. You get it roughly in the ballpark, and something like the ZMAX takes care of the rest of it. This is entering my arsenal. It's going alongside my kicks and my Darwins, and it will be used accordingly. I don't have to do any calculations. I don't have to think, you know, with something like a Preveri, which just gives me an E1 or an E2 if I've got too low a resistance on the coil I'm working with. It gets past all of that. You're basically just telling it, look, this is the temperature I want, give it to me. Downsides, well, it's pretty much the same as everything else. If you use the button and the menu to turn it off, when you take the battery out and put the battery back in, it turns it back on. So that's exactly the same kind of problem as the Preveri has. But really, I don't know how important that is. I'm not a safety Nazi. I mean, if you're aware of it and you know what's going to happen, you know what you need to do in order to stop any accidents from happening. I like this. I like it a lot. And at the price, I don't think you're going to go wrong if you like 8.5 watts or 8 watts and higher. And that's basically a 2.3 ohm atomizer on a standard 4.2 volt fresh off the battery. If that suits you, then the ZMAX will probably suit you if you want to go to power control. With that, I shall throw it back to the studio.
The Haze Hour is brought to you by Janty, pioneers in electronic smoking.
iVapour and iVapour Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's iVapour.co.uk and iVapour-elixir.co.uk. iVapour and iVapour-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of VapourTrails.tv.
And now back to the Haze Hour, sponsored by Janty.
It's the Haze Hour with the two of us. Echo, typical. There you go. It's gone now. We're on live. We're live, Chris. We're live. We're back on.
We're back on, are we?
We are back on, yes. While we were talking about power control, and just answer a few questions that came up in chat, it's 99 quid. Yes, they probably could do that with the lava tube, but seeing as how they don't want to, I don't suppose they will. And I've got to be honest and say that, you know, the calibration is off. It is off. But from that kind of 8 watts up over, it's fine. That's really is. So from my point of view, the calibration at the bottom end really doesn't matter, because it works at the level that I'm going to use it. I should also say that on a Darwin, you can't go any lower in voltage than your battery voltage at any state of charge, and the same applies to the kick, I believe. But Chris, you use a Darwin all the time, don't you?
I use it, yeah. I mean, don't laugh. Let's see if I can get it in shot here.
Down a bit, up a bit, left a bit, right a bit, up a bit. There you go.
Up a bit. Got it?
Yep.
And on the end of that, there is a Darwin.
There is a Darwin on the end of the gooseneck. Which is bigger,
like
the gooseneck or the Darwin?
Isn't it? Sorry?
I say, which is bigger, the gooseneck or the Darwin?
I think at the moment it's the gooseneck. Aye, it is.
So, you've been using power control, but you don't understand watts, do you?
Nah.
So what do you understand by the display on your
I
Darwin?
didn't understand that either. What don't I understand?
What do you understand about the display on your Darwin? What does it tell you?
Right. What I look at, well, when I have a drag, first thing I look for is flavour, right? And if it's lacking or if it's burnt, then I'll have a look at the dial. And sometimes on the Darwin, as anybody who's got one knows, you can catch the little control ring here. And it's either moved up, moved down, or something like that. So I understand, for me, if the Darwin's sitting at 8.6, 8.5, 8.6, that's the point where I'm happy.
Right.
Now, can I just point out that when I go to the lava tube, because I've got always got a few things on the go at once, because I've got different flavoured juices and what have you.
Yes.
On that one, it's 4.5, but I'm assuming that's what, volts.
It is, yes, but is that always with the same device on there? Because I know.
No, I mean with this particular device on here, which is the Raptor tank. I like that at about 4.5 because this is, I mean, you know me, I different part with vapour.
That's true.
And if I like to chew on a bit of vapour, which, you know, people do, that's when I pick this up.
Right.
Okay.
But
To chew, I need that at 4.5.
Right.
But
Now,
to me, it doesn't matter what they are. I just know the numbers.
right. What the question I want to ask you is, I know you use the Raptor tank on that an awful lot of the time.
Yes.
But you always put the same value coil in the Raptor tank, don't you?
Yes. And I was confused, I must admit, when I first went to buy the coils.
Right.
Because here was the one question I avoid like the plague.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me a choice and said LR or SR. Low resistance or standard resistance.
Right. Which did you choose?
I chose the SR for safety.
That figures. That kind of figures. So you basically, you've got a variable voltage device that you're using at 4.5 volts with a standard resistance insert.
Yes.
Into the, I keep forgetting the name of the Raptor tank.
The Raptor tank.
So you've got exactly the same wattage, or as close as damn it, every time that you put it together.
Yes.
Now, when coming back to the Darwin, I know you use all sorts of different devices on there, because I've seen everything from what looks to be the VH did clone, the mini did clone.
That's correct.
Seen, is it Cyclones?
The Cyclone at the moment is sitting on the GG.
Right, but you've had that on the Darwin.
Yes.
And I've seen all kinds on the Darwin. And you always run it at around the same 8586.
Always.
So that's the same heat. And do you notice much of a difference between them?
No. Because I obviously have the same taste. What I like must fall into the same category all the time. So when I shift things around, I tend to get the same thing. Now, when I use these, it wasn't quite right what I said there. When I use the rebuildable, I use them strictly for flavour hits. Because that, at the end of the day, is my big thing. I want flavour.
Yes.
Raptor, chewy vapour and flavour.
Right.
But when I'm looking for a real flavour hit, that's when I go to rebuildables. Smooth flavour hit. I'm not a huge one, as you well know, for throat hit.
No.
But one thing I do know is when I make coils for these rebuildables, and I look at what it says on the Darwin, now am I right in saying the ohms?
Yes.
Always come up at between 0.9 and 1.4 would be the top.
Right.
Always.
Right.
And that's where I enjoy them. When I've had a reading of 2 or more, I've pulled it off and remade it. And yet I've seen other people say, oh, it's at 2.5 or it's at whatever. And I think, now, I know for a fact that this, for example, which is the little gurgly NTT, that the coil in there is 2.8 and 2.4, I beg your pardon, and I can tell it's not right for me, but it seems to be right for a lot of other people. Now, I don't know what that says about me. I don't know how to describe myself. Do I like low resistance? Do I like high resistance? Do you see where I'm confused?
I do see where you're confused, and it's down to not understanding. I think that the resistance is only used to change the wattage. And think of it like an oven. And for the benefit of those people watching live and those people that will be watching the recordings, we've kind of set this up, and I'll tell you for why. I've been trying to get Kat to understand what watts are for how long now?
Oh, about 2, yeah.
And we know you can't get your head around the maths, can you?
No, it's apples and baths to me.
Right. And So what we thought was, if I can get Kat to understand it tonight, then everybody will. That was what we agreed, wasn't it?
I wished you the best of luck. But
right.
I mean, I know you say we've set this up, but what I've said is exactly, you know, the way I feel about it.
Oh,
yes.
We've got to be upfront about all of this. We haven't set the conversation up where I've said, Kat, you be dense about it all. This is actually where Kat's at. This is her understanding of it.
I am dense about it all.
You're not. Nobody is. It's the understanding of how watts work. And if you think in terms of light bulbs, as I said in that bit of VT, if you've got a 100-watt light bulb, you know it's going to be bright. We used the example of your bathroom, but then you told me the bathroom's 17 foot and you need about 300 watts.
I was going to say I've got at least 12 bulbs in there.
Yes. But if you get a 100-watt light bulb, it's going to be brighter than a 60-watt, and the 60-watt will be brighter than the 30-watt. Right?
Yes. Well, that makes sense because it's in higher increments.
Yes.
And this is where I get confused because people start going lower numbers.
Yes.
Mean the opposite to my understanding.
It's what's happened is we've got two technologies going in parallel. We've got variable voltage on the one hand, and then we've got what is effectively variable resistance in terms of atomizers on the other. And the problem with that is, as the volts get higher, it gets hotter, and as the resistance gets lower, it gets hotter. Now, I can tell you now that a 100-watt light bulb will have a resistance of about 125 ohms, and a 60-watt light bulb will have a resistance of about 85 ohms, and no, I've gone the wrong way. A 30-watt will have 250, and so on and so on. So as the light bulb gets dimmer, it's got more resistance. All right? But if you think about watts as being just a measure of temperature, and if you set your Darwin to 10 watts, you know it's going to be hotter. Yes? And that's really all you need to know. The thing about a power controlled variable wattage, if people want to call it that, is that it doesn't really matter what device you put on the top, as long as it's within certain limits. Let's say 1.5 ohms to 3 ohms. The majority of them will cope with that, and as you turn the watts up, it gets hotter. The thing about it is once you've set it, say you've set it with a 3 ohm atomizer on, you can put a 1.5 ohm and it'll automatically reduce the voltage to give you the same heat. And that's what you find all the time. Using the Darwin.
That's what happens with the Darwin. I can do that with the Darwin. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. And that's the difference between variable voltage and power controlled or variable wattage. When you use variable voltage, you've got to know really what the resistance of the atomizer is, and that's where the confusion comes in. Because you'll see a lot of people saying, oh, you really want to try 5 volts. Well, right, but what do I put on it? What's special about 5 volts? If a 1.5 ohm atomizer is too hot on 4.2 at 5 volts, it's going to be blistering. You've got to start messing about working out what resistance of contour you want. With variable wattage, none of that occurs. Are you any the wiser?
No.
Oh, God.
But I've got to tell you this. Gary Dibley's just put into chat. Going on that, my wife must have a very high resistance. Hang on, it's just gone out of sight.
She's rather dim.
Aye.
Yes. Jeff Benion's...
How can I concentrate on what you're telling me when they're typing things like that in there?
Well, now you know why I very rarely read chat. Tonight's an exception. Jeff Benion said, think of a road journey. Ohms equals weight in the car, volts equals the speed, and watts equals the time to complete the journey. Does that make any sense?
No.
No.
Me, right, all this talk that's come out lately about P whatever, I nearly called it PMS, but it cannot be.
Well, it's kind of the same.
Right. Has led me to think, what the hell do they need to know all that for? And it's confused me even more.
Well,
and that's why I brought this subject up. Because the way I look at it, I get in a car, I turn the key, and I drive somewhere. I don't need to know what goes on in the engine. That's what I pay the mechanic for.
Here's the thing. You, like me, you drive an automatic, don't you?
Yes.
And if you drive an automatic, you've got cruise control, haven't you?
Yes.
So if you set the cruise control to 70, you just go at 70, don't you? You've got no need to know how many revs you're doing. You've got no need to know what gear you're doing. You just need to know you're going at 70.
Now, you see, I have a problem with that. It's going off subject, but I have a problem with that.
Go on then.
Because I never ever use cruise control because I didn't trust it.
Right. Well, I use it all the time.
I trust me foot where it comes to that. Oh, knocking these down.
And has your foot just knocked something off the desk?
I've knocked all my e-cigs over. I must get myself one of them stand things. Yet I trust this Darwin implicitly.
Well, it does exactly what you want it to do. If
it
does.
It's so easy for nuggets like me, because, all right, I glance at it and it gives me the information that somebody may ask me. I don't need it, because I just know that the taste is right.
Yes.
And that's all, you know. But I just feel that my ignorance has now needed to be upgraded a bit, because I don't understand this new thing that's come to light, this PMS or whatever.
PWM, pulse width modulation.
With modulation.
Pulse width modulation.
Width. WIDTH.
That's the one, yes.
It sounds like something that would apply to a dildo, for God's sake. It doesn't sound right to me. I mean, does it vibrate?
I'm sorry. Yes, it actually is a kind of a vibration. It's the... Oh God, I'm going to try and illustrate this. Consider pulse... I've got to go full screen for this one, I'm sorry. Chris, consider pulse width modulation to be like this. There's a little switch that switches the power on and off, and you've effectively got a little man doing that on the switch, turning it on and off. And it's... And roughly speaking, please don't quote me on this one, because mathematically I'm slightly incorrect, but it's roughly speaking, it's the average of how far the thing gets switched on and off. So you could be close in your estimation.
Well, for God's sake, it's getting out of hand, you know. David's advert time. Maybe you needed to calm down.
We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
The Haze Hour is brought to you by Janty, pioneers in electronic smoking. And now back to the Haze Hour, sponsored by Janty.
I think I'm going to say, Sav, it's safe to take your fingers out of your ears now. For those of you watching after the fact on video on demand or wherever it happens to be, I think I have to say that tonight was one of those nights when you had to be there, because chat, yes, they haven't made it easy for us to concentrate, let's put it that way. There are some ideas for mods that are going on in chat that, seriously, honestly, guys, you should be ashamed of yourselves, but kudos, there's some great stuff coming out there. Yes. Yeah, I'm just going to say what Russell VR Ord said. What is what you want? Volts and ohms are for technical people, and I think we'll draw a line under it there, shall we?
I think he's probably right, like.
I think he's not far wrong. Well said, that man. Now, you know what a battery charger is, don't you?
I do. I've got one.
Well, have you ever been out and about and then only taken one battery because you forgot to take your bag, or alternatively you forgot where you'd put them in the house?
Oh, well, now you know the answer to that.
Watch this,
I'm
then.
the person that's lost loads. I can't put them in a safe place.
Well, funnily enough,
yes.
I got an email from Fort Knox today asking if you can go across and act as a consultant to them because they're looking for safe places to hide things.
Well, I'm good.
Apparently so. To put them safe, and they're so safe she cannot find them. Very, very good. Have a look at this then. You might enjoy this. But again, have you ever wondered what you would do if you were out and about with an 18650 device and it decided to die on you because the battery'd gone flat? Well, there's a lot of 2-bay chargers out there that will take 12 volts or whatever it would happen to be from your car battery while you were driving around the place and charge your battery up. But I'm a big fan of Xtar chargers, and a new charger has arrived and it is here. And if I hold that up, you can see that it says the MP1S battery charger, and this is quite unusual. It's come up from e-cigs, and the thing about it is it's specifically set up to work very nicely, thank you, via car batteries and also via USB, which is kind of a change. No big wall wart or anything like that. So what you get in the box, if you like, is the charger itself, which is fine. You get this hunky great big, well, it looks hunky great big, but it isn't. You get this USB charger that fits in your 12 volt socket in your car. I think we're not allowed to call them cigarette lighter sockets anymore. And as you will see quite plainly, there is the USB socket into which the supplied lead plugs, and on the other end of the supplied lead is that, which is, I believe, a mini USB, and that plugs into the mini USB on the charger, which is quite exciting in all sorts of different ways. What it basically means is, if you want to charge an 18650, you can quite easily stick your 18650 thusly, doink, into the charger, and have it sat off your USB on your laptop, on the USB charger in the car. You can more or less be charging it anywhere you like. Now, I've been using this quite a lot because it did occur to me that it might save me carrying shed loads of batteries everywhere I go, and I do tend to carry shed loads of batteries everywhere I go. It's not that I'm paranoid. Alright, I am. But yeah, it actually works very, very nicely indeed. Let me give you the specs on it so that you know. The manual, again, pretty damn good. It's 500 milliamp, which is what you would expect, and it means that it doesn't actually tax your USB at all. It's working within the USB specs, and that's probably a very good thing. It comes as well, I should mention, with 4 spaces, and it'll tell you how many spaces you need. I was just reading through the instruction manual and that came up. If, for instance, you have a 14500, you need 2 of these. If you have a 10440, you need 3 of these. And if you have a 16340 or an 18350, it's suggesting you use 4 of those, or if you've got 5 of them, you can put a 15270 in. Although I have to say, I haven't come across a 15270 and I don't know, I can't honestly think of anything off the top of my head that would use it. I have a tendency, since this arrived, to keep it in the car. On the base, it will, I believe, take a sticky fixer in that little bit where all the writing is that you don't really need to read, and that'll sit on the dashboard. And actually it gives you, if I turn it the right way up, you'll be able to read all the writing on there, I hope. Can you? There you go. Input 5 volts USB, 500 milliamps. Output 4.2 volts, 500 milliamps, which is good. Charge for 14650, 17670, 18650, 18700. And there you go. It's constant current, constant voltage. Use a special adapter or computer power. So it gives you all the information you need there. Now, I've checked it out with the veritable fluke, the constant in everything I do. My fluke comes out, and it is working exactly according to Hoyle. It's doing the job bang on the way chargers ought to, and I would expect nothing less of the Xtar at a price of $8.95. If you're the kind of person that can get through a full day with a single 18650, and I'll freely admit I am not that man. But if you can get through a full day with an 18650 or an 18500 or a 17670 or whatever, then a single bay charger is probably what you need. I'm going to do during October a more in-depth piece on chargers and give you some purchase recommendations. But for the moment, at least, I am going to say that this beast, the MP1S, if you are the kind of person that can get away with a single 18650 during the course of the day, this will probably suit your needs very, very nicely indeed. I use it in the car, it sits on my dashboard, and if I need to get a battery charging, or if I know I've got a flat battery and I'm doing a decent length of drive, I'll bang it in there, and that's cool. It charges an 18650, the ubiquitous Panasonic CGR 18650CH. It's taken 4 hours. I'm charging that from out, if you like, flat on any of my devices, which is not properly flat, but it's taken around about 4 hours, 3.5 to 4 hours to charge it fully, which is okay. You can quite safely leave this on charge overnight. You can set it away to do it and go to bed. It will be fine. There is no problem. I have not yet had an issue of heat or anything else with it. There you go, short and sharp, sweet and snappy, the Xtar MP1S from ZMAX at $8.95. Worth a look. And indeed it is. And to answer 1 or 2 questions that have come up from chat, the little light changes colour from green to red, but I'm colourblind, so I never look at them anyway. Set it on when you go to bed and it's charged. If you've got somebody around if you are colourblind, that can tell the difference between red and green, great, they can tell you when it's charged, but the light changes colour. As easy as that. Chris, we had a question from chat, did we not, from Steve37 UK?
From Steve37, yeah. Regarding last night's show, I have a question which has been bothering me. Nicotine. When they make cigs, is nicotine added to the cigs, or is nicotine in the tobacco? Also, how do they make nicotine go into e-liquid?
Well, right, I'll try and cover that as best I can. And can I also apologise for the lag between Cat's lips moving and the sound getting to you. It's out with our control. It's just the way these things are. I'm working very, very hard to rectify the situation by trying all kinds of different software, and we'll get there, we will. Right, nicotine. comes from tobacco. To synthesize nicotine is massively expensive. So it's extracted and purified from the tobacco leaf. And it's only the nicotine that comes out in the farmer grade nicotine that all of the, how can I put this, all of the ethical nicotine producers actually produce. You'll find it's exactly the same grade that's used in nicotine patches, nicotine gums. It's been okayed by the MHRA and just about every other medical governing body throughout the world as being fine. That's why it's called farmer grade. It's 99.999% pure, so you know exactly what it is, and then obviously it gets diluted down for juice. And it is a very good question to ask. The question then is, do they put nicotine into cigarettes? Actually quite the reverse. Governments have historically asked for them to reduce the nicotine in cigarettes. I think, you know, the conspiracy theorist inside me says at the behest of the pharmacy companies, because, or at the behest of the tobacco companies, actually, I can't see them arguing, because if there's less nicotine in a cigarette, a proper one, a tobacco one, when you smoke it, you don't get the amount of nicotine that you want. You'll smoke a second and a third and a fourth. And if they're talking about reducing the nicotine right down, what they're actually doing is upping the relationship of the carcinogens to the nicotine. What happens with an e-cig is it goes that way. Nicotine's up here, carcinogens are down on the floor somewhere. They're more or less gotten rid of. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to stick my neck out and say you will not find a purer or less risky way of getting your nicotine than with an e-cig. And I hope, Steve37 UK, that answers your question as full as it needs. You have no need to worry about it. There is the risk profile of an e-cig is thousands of times less than with an ordinary tobacco cigarette. In the studies that have been done, it's been characterised at 1/1400th of the risk of a tobacco cigarette. And indeed, over the last couple of weeks, there's been bits and bobs released that would say that it would take you around, I think, was it 6 months, Chris, to get as many carcinogens out of e-cigs as you would out of one fag?
Yeah, I did read that. Yes.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it would probably take, well, probably longer.
I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right. And Jill CB says she's still concerned about the mention in last night's show about children as young as 12 getting NRT through schools from the NHS. And I'm interested to know why you're concerned, Jill CB. And this is not to say that you're wrong. My take on it is that if you've got a 12-year-old that's already taken up smoking, and if you can give them a much less risk profile item to get them off the cigarettes, that's the be all and the end all. Nicotine doesn't kill. In the doses that we're talking about, it doesn't kill. Yes, it's a poison, but it's only a poison at certain doses, and that dose varies according to your height, your size, how used you are to using it, and so on and so forth. But the LD50, the lethal dose for 50% of the population, is around about 60 milligrams in one dose. And I'm here to tell you for a certain fact, I have before now taken a mill of juice in one. Well, we saw it at the knees meet last year, did we not, Kat? A mill of juice down my neck in how long?
In so many minutes, wasn't it?
It was a very, very few minutes. And I've got to be honest and say a lot of that was juice that I just swallowed. And it makes you feel nauseous, but it's very, very difficult to overdose on nicotine from an e-cig. You'll start throwing up long before it's going to do you any damage. So if you've got, you know, a 12-year-old kid, the MHRA, remember, this is the nanny state. The nanny state has decided, unusually for them, that it's a good idea to give NRT to 12-year-old kids to get them off the fags. And for once, I agree with them. Why not? You know, if it's going to stop them from killing themselves in 30 years' time, I don't have a problem with that particularly. Never have, and I don't think I ever will. Gillis says he started smoking at 11 at school. I started when I was 8. By the time I was at 11, I was on 15 a day. So there you go. It's all good stuff. Out of the back of the bike sheds, smoking usually. The girls wouldn't have a bar of me. It was shocking, it was. I want to play in, if I may, if this is all right with you, Chris. I want to play in a quick promo for Mr. Van Basten, because next month Marco Van Basten, who's in chat tonight, will be joining us with a show, and it looks as though it's going to be good. Well, there you go. That's the knees meet coming up on the 13th. That's a fortnight on Saturday. Time flies by. Absolutely flies by. Fortnight on Saturday. And I think I'm being counted down, am I?
Yeah, time's starting to run out, Dave. You've got about a minute 45.
Then we shall go with the credits and say thanks, Chris, for joining me tonight.
No problem. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And I've enjoyed your company. And the great thing about it is you don't get to nick anything off me because you're still up in Tynemouth and I'm down near Sunderland. Bonus for me tonight.
Can I just say thanks to everybody in chat? They've been brilliant.
Absolutely. A big thank to everybody in chat. We love our chat. We love our live viewers. It's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you all next week. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye.
The Haze Hour was sponsored by Janty, pioneers in electronic cigarettes.